the Irish guy, and after that Declan Rice love song yesterday, yeah, you probably all now think that I am weirder than an Eskimo who's allergic to snow. But lads, today is a new video. I'm going to take a look at every Premier League club and find their worst rock bottom moment of the season so far. And some of these are so dreadful. I actually feel kind of bad bringing these games up again. It's like me reminding you of that puppy you buried when you were 4. Right, let's go. Arsenal. 2-1 versus Fulham, December 2023. Arsenal had the Christmas from hell. I mean, what did you do for your Christmas? Did you have a bad one too? Did Santa Claus just plop a rubbish bag filled with monkey heads on your floor? Well lads, Arsenal fans had a horrible Christmas too. I mean, pretty sure Robbie of AFTV spent New Year's Eve sitting in a cold dark bedroom, thrusting a fork into his thigh to see if he could still feel pain, because Arsenal's title challenge was in the bin. They had just been dealt the embarrassment of losing to West Ham at home on the 28th. Yeah, you steal their best player for £100 million and still take 0 points off them at home? But no, that was bad, yes. But to then travel to Craven Cottage and lose to a Fulham team who had an even worse Christmas, losing 3 on the bounce? This result, Arsenal's first defeat at Fulham since 2012. That left Arsenal 4th in the league, just 1 point above Spurs. Forget about challenging for the title. There would have been a sizable chunk of Arsenal fans who were probably then tipping them to finish outside the top 4, below both Aston Villa and Spurs. Yeah, I mean, they were the pessimistic bunch. The type of hysterical person who probably thinks the world is ending just because they watch Independence Day on their phone. But still, for Arsenal, losing to a team with Willian on the wing, you know, that old geriatric useless ex-Arsenal sausage who they'd already chucked back to Brazil? That was a horrible moment. Aston Villa 4-0 versus Tottenham, March 2024. Look, there were very few teams who started this season as badly as Aston Villa. Imagine being told on the 12th of August, when Newcastle hammered Unai Emery's team 5-1 at St James's Park. Imagine being told that one of these teams would qualify for the Champions League. You'd be so sure that the answer was once again Newcastle, that you'd probably agree to eat a barbecued puppy if you were wrong. Look, that was a rotten Villa display, but no. I think the true rock bottom moment happened last month in a huge monster top 4 clash between Aston Villa and Spurs. Yeah, Postecoglou's boys then leave Villa Park with a 4-0 win. Tottenham's 4th 4-0 win at this ground since 2012. I'll admit it, when that result happened, with Spurs scoring all their goals in the second half, I thought Villa had completely blown top 4. I thought Emery was bottling it, that he was now just a nervous chipmunk second-guessing himself. That result left Spurs 2 points behind in 5th with the game in hand. Words cannot express just how miserable those Villa fans must have been in the crowd. Bournemouth 2-1 versus Wolves, October 2023. Look, I think Andoni Iraola is a truly wonderful manager. And lads, considering Liverpool are in for a completely wild goose hunt this summer when trying to get a new manager in, I mean, just give it a couple of weeks. Considering they just poached Bournemouth sporting director Richard Hughes. Oh, just wait. Iraola is soon going to be linked with the job at Anfield. I just know it. Well, back before Halloween, I remember I was starting to look like someone with a cotton candy brain. Someone who was born with the intelligence levels of a cartoon monkey, because I looked like I was barking up the wrong tree to such a horrible extent that the squirrels were chucking up their hum on right move. I had been saying for weeks how the Cherries, choosing to ruthlessly bin off that uninspiring lump of human toast in Gary O'Neill. Yeah. So here were Bournemouth welcoming Wolves. The Cherries were 19th in the league on just 3 points from 8 games, and they lose. 1-0 up at halftime. They somehow conspire to let O'Neill escape with the win. That was the moment where the media truly turned on Iraola, with most papers championing him as favourite for the sack. The way people spoke about it, written off as this short-term failed experiment already. He was being treated as if he was Pepe Mel at West Brom, or Frank de Boer at Crystal Palace, or Francesco Guidolin at Swansea. Was that his name? I don't know, he's that forgettable. That this fellow was just some freakish ogre, not fit for Premier League level, especially not having lost at home to a glorified PE coach. Someone who probably used to stir the tea with his pinky at Anfield. Brentford 4-1 versus Wolves, December 2023. Look, Brentford have had many an uncomfortable moment this season. There's been so many terrible rock bottom moments, but I've had to pick one. 27th of December 2023. The Bees were in free fall. I mean, just lost 5 of their previous 6 league games. Thomas Frank was being made to look as tactically sound as a pig's corpse. They then welcomed Wolves to Molyneux, who very quickly scored twice in the space of a minute. Brentford were 3-1 down after 28 minutes, and it was all due to their undoing, because Brentford just made Ireland international centre-half Nathan Collins the most expensive player in their history after buying him from Wolves for £23 million in the summer. And yet here was the most expensive ever footballer looking like a drunken Teletubby against his old club. After going 1-0 down, Brentford immediately take the kick-off. The ball is then passed to Collins, who gives a hideous slobby back pass for old colleague Quanky Chanta to latch onto and score. It was a mistake you might see in children's football, when the defense is full of fat 10-year-olds whose pre-match meal was Burger King in the car. The sound of those traveling Wolves fans, most likely openly mocking your most expensive ever purchase. It would be like if I rocked up at Jeremy Lich's mansion and insulted his prized Lamborghini. He'd probably throw a cement brick in my face. Brighton 6-1 versus Aston Villa, September 2023. Brighton have had a poor season. They have. And if Roberto De Zerbi actually gets the Liverpool job after this absolute meltdown year, it'll be a very firm disgrace. It reminds you when Liverpool tried to hire another Roberto Martinez from Wigan in 2012. Sure, the Great Escape in the spring was amazing, but are we forgetting he oversaw 8 consecutive league defeats in the first half of the season? He was lucky the Wigan chairman loved him so much, because try and produce those sort of results in the Premier League, and even at Sunderland or at QPR at the time, and Martinez would have been in the bin. Similarly, it has been a dreadful season, and yes, the 4-0 loss at Roma in the Europa League is screaming out at me as being a bad moment, but no, I don't think any team in the league has suffered the long-term consequences of a damaging defeat as much as Brighton this year. Don't forget, the Seagulls have won 5 of the first 6 Premier League games at the start of the season. They look like they were a very real challenger for the Champions League spots. Yeah, they then travelled to Aston Villa and lose 6-1. They were 4-0 down at half-time. No result has rocked any other team quite as badly as that one, because I am sorry. To have won 5 out of 6 games beforehand with ease, winning that bunch of matches, which included a trip to Old Trafford, by the way, by an aggregate score of 17 goals to 5. Yeah. Since losing to Villa, they haven't struck 2 wins in a row together since. That horrible embarrassment at Villa Park shredded Brighton's entire belief system. They're a bit like a poor soul before and after a crippling divorce. Instead of being that happy-go-lucky, charismatic man about town, he now spends every day in bed, clinging to his teddy bear and mumbling to mail-order bribes from Mali on Skype. Burnley 2-0 versus Bournemouth, March 2024. Look, Burnley have had some terribly low moments this season, but the worst? I'm gonna go with the 3rd of March. This wasn't a heavy defeat or anything, but it was probably the most depressing loss. The final nail in their relegation coffin. A meek 2-0 loss at home to Bournemouth. It was their 4th defeat in a row, and to me, it just looked like quiet self-acceptance that they were going down. It meant that they're now joint bottom of the league and were 11 points from safety. You would not have found a single Burnley fan on the planet still clinging to hope of survival then. Chelsea 1-0 versus Liverpool, February 2024. Lads, there have been some dreadful moments from Mauricio Pochettino so far, and let's be real, losing home to Nottingham Forest in September was on paper the absolute worst result of the season for Chelsea, but I don't think it was their rock bottom moment. No, that was reserved for the League Cup final, where they had to listen to Gary Neville proclaim them as being billion-pound bottle jobs after losing the final to a bunch of Liverpool kids. Virgil van Dijk scored the 118th minute winner. No shame in that. But I'm sorry, Jurgen Klopp had emptied his bench. There were probably footballers on that pitch who still had to report to the taxman what they got of the Tooth Fairy that year. Jadon Nance is probably thinking about what to put in his letter to Santa Claus this year. Bobby Clark's mum probably forbids him from eating blue Smarties before bed. And Chelsea, with £100 million stars on the pitch, still lose. Crystal Palace 4-1 versus Brighton, February 2024. This has been a mostly painful season for Crystal Palace, but surely losing that weird and strange derby to Brighton 4-1 will have hurt. Being 3-0 down after 34 minutes, which plunged Palace just 5 points above the relegation zone. That was the game where I think everyone realised that lovable old granddad Roy Hodgson, someone who probably wasn't even physically able to eat steak anymore, he had to go. Everton 6-0 versus Chelsea, April 2024. Everton having such a strange season. This is a club who've dipped their toes in and out of the relegation battle so many times. I'm sorry, but how does a team win 4 games on the bounce in December without even conceding a goal, to then embarking on a 13-game winless run? It did not compute. It felt like the Toffees players had since been visited by the Space Jam aliens at Christmas. But their rock bottom moment, it only actually happened last week. Don't forget, the Toffees had already beaten Chelsea with ease earlier in the season, so to now melt like an ugly ice cream on the Stamford Bridge pitch, losing by 6 goals to 0. Cole Palmer is a kid who had not scored even a single Premier League goal up until this season, and here he is casually netting 4 against Jordan Pickford. You even had the indignity of having Chelsea players squabble over which one got to get on the score sheet. It was like watching a bunch of children fighting over who gets the last milkshake at McDonald's. For a man who prides himself on offensive organisation to then concede 6 at a struggling Chelsea, it was officially Everton's heaviest defeat since conceding 7 at Arsenal in May 2005 in a stadium which no longer exists. It's just a bunch of posh London flats where even the toilet water probably tastes like lemonade. Fulham 3-0 versus Bournemouth, December 2023. This has been a sleepy mid-table snooze fest of a season for Fulham fans. If they were to bring out a season review DVD, it will be about as exciting and gripping as an episode of Grey's Anatomy. They've never really been in any danger of going down or getting Europe. It's all been about as bland as mushroom pizza. But the worst moment, probably losing 3-0 to Bournemouth on Boxing Day, being absolutely obliterated by Iriola Ball because it meant they now lost 3 games in a row to Newcastle, Burnley and Bournemouth, conceding 8 and scoring none. What made this even more confusing was that this horror run was off the back of beating Nottingham Forest and West Ham both 5-0 in the space of 4 days. Weird. Liverpool 3-0 versus Atalanta, April 2024. Look, losing home to Crystal Palace felt like a rock bottom moment, but you never know. Liverpool might somehow still salvage a title win. It's not over. But what is over is the chance of a Europa League final win in Dublin. Lads, imagine if the Reds don't win the title. It actually wouldn't have been so bad because Klopp would still be able to win a European final in Ireland in his final ever Liverpool match. Nobody would have cared about the title collapse anymore. This would have been an epic departure. And Liverpool fans, they thought they were in the final. Ever since they kicked off their first group game, they were too good for Thursday Night Football, right? Klopp was finally going to avenge that Europa League final defeat from his first season and tick off the final chunk of silverware on his Liverpool CV, and then you spoil it by losing 3-0 to an average Atalanta in the quarter-finals. That was it. Done. No Xabi Alonso versus Jurgen Klopp final in Dublin, where Liverpool fans would have painted the city red. None of that. Instead, you just gave West Ham flop Gianluca Scamacca the freedom of the park to burn your European hopes in a bin. Luton Town 5-1 versus Brentford, April 2024. Look, I think Luton Town's rock bottom moment is probably yet to come when they actually do go down, but credit's where it's due. For a feeble team put together on a shoestring budget, Luton have not been battered much. I said it a couple of weeks ago. Rob Edwards sets his side up not to get battered. Until now. Because since I said that, they've now lost 5-1 twice in a row. Look, that can happen at Manchester City, sure, but to then welcome a fellow relegation rival Brentford to your ground, a team who've been barely able to buy a win in 2024, and yet this tired, exhausted, out of ideas Luton side lose 5-1 at home. Do you think any Luton fan walked out of that stadium and thought, "Oh, don't worry, we'll still stay up," like an optimistic Mickey Mouse? I'm guessing they went straight down the local Wetherspoons and sadly buried their face in an undercooked chicken pie. Man City 2-2 versus Crystal Palace, December 2023. Look, I know most people would probably assume that Man City's rock bottom moment was being dumped out of the Champions League by Real Madrid and penalties. Well, if I was a Man City fan, I'd be nothing but proud. This is Manchester City, a club I remember conceding 8 at Middlesbrough. Here they were having 33 shots against the great Real Madrid in a single match, utterly wolfing down possession and making Carlo Ancelotti look like he was in charge of Everton once again. They're shutting up shop and defending for their lives. I think the rock bottom moment was actually a 2-2 draw at home to Crystal Palace in mid-December. That was worrying. Seeing Michael Olise net a 95th minute penalty at the Etihad. You know, that former cheese string who Man City kicked out to Reading in 2017? That was worrying because it now meant that City had only won 1 of the previous 6 league games and left them 4th in the table, having played a game more than Liverpool, Arsenal and Aston Villa. They were only 1 point above Spurs. They were being left behind. Right? Right? Man United 4-3 versus Copenhagen, November 2023. Don't get it wrong. Manchester United were inches away from writing one of the biggest rock bottom moments in their history on Sunday. But right now, no, it's still somehow losing 4-3 to Copenhagen in the Champions League. They were 3-2 up with 7 minutes left and still conspired to lose in Denmark to move bottom of the group. That was the game where people wrote off Anthony Onana as a £50 million flop. It's a scoreline which almost defies belief. A must-win game to get your Champions League season back on track, and you lose in the Viking Mountains? It was honestly such a garbage, unforgivable result. Newcastle 3-1 versus Nottingham Forest, December 2023. Look, Newcastle risking it all for Champions League qualification and instead being caught on the counter-attack and chucking away even Europa League qualification in their final group game at home against AC Milan. That would have massively hurt, especially considering the team they've so very nearly knocked out. PSG are probably on course for a Champions League final at Wembley. That would have been devastating. I know it was devastating. I was there in the crowd. I've said too much. But it wasn't a rock bottom moment. No, that was Boxing Day. Newcastle had just been battered at Everton and Tottenham. They had feebly lost away at tiny little Luton. The fans demanded a Christmas response at home to Nottingham Forest. And they instead let old boy Chris Wood net a hat-trick with ease. You know, the fellow was just some creepy ventriloquist doll who constantly looked miserable on the Magpies bench. That was the first match where some Newcastle fans started to turn on Eddie Howe. Sheffield United 8-0 versus Newcastle, September 2023. Where do you want to start? There are rock bottom moments everywhere you look. Sheffield United have lost 5-0 4 times this season. They've lost 6-0 at home, and they let Burnley whack 9 goals past them over 2 games. There have been so many truly rotten results. One that stands out is Aston Villa winning 5-0 at Bramall Lane, considering they were 4-0 up after 30 minutes. But you know what? How could I not choose an 8-0 loss at home? How could that not be the rock bottom moment? You know what I said about Brighton never recovering from losing 6-1 at Aston Villa? I think this result is probably as damaging, because don't forget, the Blades were actually tough to beat at the start of the season. Yeah, they only had 1 point for the first 5 games, but Paul Heckingbottom's team were competing in every match. They had drawn with Everton and only lost the other 4 games by a single goal, including against Manchester City. The best team in the world only won at Bramall Lane with an 88th minute winner, and the Blades eventually lost to Tottenham, yes, but don't forget, they were 1-0 up until the 97th minute. That Blades team, back then, were an unrecognisable outfit to the pathetic one we've seen since, because losing 8-0 at home to Newcastle ruined them, letting 8 different Newcastle players score. It was truly embarrassing, and they've never been the same since. Tottenham 4-0 versus Newcastle, April 2024. Look, losing 4-1 at home to Chelsea in November was an ugly embarrassment, but you know what, weirdly, I think that game was sort of twisted in the media to almost celebrate Postecoglou's bravery and his adventurous football to keep it tacky even with 9 men on the pitch. They were almost painting Tottenham to be that weird, shirtless army from 300. But the worst just happened. Travelling to St James's Park, a year on from that humiliating 6-1 collapse. I said in my predictions video, Tottenham owed their travelling fans a performance. This was going to be proof that they finally shirked the bottle job tag from the past. This was a new Spurs. Nah, they lose 4-0 after having 73% possession. Yikes. West Ham 6-0 versus Arsenal, February 2024. Look, conceding 5 goals and mid-table teams like Fulham and Crystal Palace is truly bad, as is chucking away a 3-1 lead at Newcastle to still lose. But the standout loss is West Ham losing 6-0 at home to Arsenal. That was a shocking defeat for West Ham to being 5-0 down at half-time against a Gunners team who they just beaten 6 weeks before, letting old boy Declan Rice curl in a 6th after an hour. These are the sort of horrific performances and results which are getting Moyes the sack. Wolves 2-1 versus Sheffield United, November 2023. You lost to Sheffield United? Really? Anyway, that's the video. Let me know what do you think. Let me know in the comments section below what do you think. Let me know what was your rock bottom moment. Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give a like, share, and subscribe as always. I'll talk to you in a while.